My name is Charlotte Beaumont-Field, and I am the Sector Development Officer, Human Rights at QCOS. This is my first meeting, and I'm very happy to welcome you all. Just a bit of housekeeping, just so everybody can make sure that all their functions are working. I'm generally going to ask if people may use to raise their hand if they want to contribute, and then we can use it that way, or you're welcome to just put questions in the chat. So our first network meeting of the year is engaging with the Queensland Public Trustee Customer Advocate. Before I move on, just problem with your mouse, Stacey. I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I come to you from Meanjin, Brisbane, and I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are facilitating this webinar, the Turrbal and Yagara peoples. I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging. I especially welcome and pay respect to all the First Nations people joining us online today. If you would like to, please take a moment using the chat function to state where you're joining from today. It's a lovely way to acknowledge the breadth of our country, and I would like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. Thank you. All right, so we're lucky enough to have two guest speakers today talking about the customer advocate. We will hear from Melissa Charity, and she is the Director of Independent Services and Customer Advocate for the Queensland Public Trustee. We'll also hear from one of the customers, Donna Duncan, who is the Program Coordinator for the Sunshine Coast Citizen Advocacy Program. So a quick session overview. I will go through a little bit for those of you who are not familiar with the Human Rights Network. Like me, I'm just, I think, 6 or 7 weeks into becoming familiar with the Human Rights Network meetings. From what I have learned so far, they are a wonderful way to join community sector services people from all over to share ideas and thoughts and connect about how to promote human rights in their service delivery. And what I have found so far is that a lot of people are using human rights in their service delivery and they may not even know it. So I've watched a lot of these now on YouTube because we do put our meetings up. And it is a really wonderful way to see how people come together and can connect using these meetings. So I'm really honoured to be a part of this today. So as I said, we'll go through a quick synopsis of what a Human Rights Network meeting is for those who may be new or fairly new to the process. Then we will hear from Melissa. And after that, I've adopted this new phrase. I learned it from a colleague who learned it from another colleague. It's the fireside chat. And so Melissa and I, and possibly Donna, if she wants to contribute, will explore some questions relating to human rights and the customer advocate role. Then we will hear from lovely Donna, who has stepped in and agreed to share some really interesting case studies about her experience using the customer advocate. So I really think that that's a great way for you all to learn how, the Queensland Public Trustee can feel a little daunting. So this has been Donna's examples, a great way to show you some practical applications and some, actual stories about how wonderful outcomes were achieved using the customer advocate. And then to finish up, we'll be, doing some summaries. We'll have some questions and answers if you like. But as I said, feel free to raise your hand during the course of the presentations or use the chat function. And then some next steps. So first up, we'll just have a quick overview of what the network meetings are. So as I said, they're a great way for people to come together to really deepen their understanding of what human rights respecting practice is. So an opportunity, as I said, to share experiences. So I'd really encourage some discussion and some chat. Feel free to, you know, clarify things or what have you. I don't want this to be just a sort of me staring at you and, you know, providing information. So feel free to share experiences and questions. So we also share information and resources on human rights and social justice matters within the community service sector, and identification of common issues across the sector so we can inform advocacy and submissions, which I think is really wonderful because so sometimes we get a little bit siloed, so it's really wonderful to be able to sort of not join together in problems, but realise that we're not alone in some of the frustrations we might be experiencing in the community services sector. So it's kind of, and also the triumphs too, that we've, you know, we can share things that have worked for us and maybe help, you know, another participant who's watching this. All right, moving on. So we offer, you know, we can offer guest speakers with a variety of, you know, in-depth knowledge about different topics. And also, as I said, access to your own peers to share insights and information. We can, so I guess the main thing is not to be scared of like the human rights literature. We really want this to become a very easy, natural way of including it in your community service provision. So these meetings are a great way to become familiar a little bit more with the different sections of the Act and how they apply to what you're providing in your own particular service. And involvement in this meeting is open to anyone working in the community services non-government organisations in Queensland. So we're just about to hand over to Melissa, but just a little bit. The Customer Advocate was established in line with best practice examples of similar offices across the finance sector, and Melissa has worked in conjunction with stakeholders, customers and the organisation to build the new function with a short and long-term objective of achieving outcomes for customers. Since being established in 2021, the Customer Advocate team at Queensland Public Trustee have been involved in over 280 individual customer matters, ensuring the customer voices were heard in their interactions with the Queensland Public Trustee. So I just wanted to also read a little bit about Melissa. She is the Queensland Public Trustee's Customer Advocate. She developed the framework and processes to guide the function, and since then has continued to support customers, support networks and advocacy groups to achieve positive outcomes on customer matters, which is, you know, really important. I've learned a lot in preparing for this webinar myself. So I was always a little bit daunted of the Queensland Public Trustee, to be honest. Sorry, Melissa. But, you know, I worked in an adult homeless shelter for a number of years, and there was a lot of clients or people there who were having struggles. So this was before 2021 though, so I'm happy to see that there's such an avenue to give customers a voice, and I'm very happy to have Melissa here with us today so she can shed some more light on this amazing tool. Okay, thanks Melissa. I'll just stop sharing.
Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you everyone for having me here today to talk about my role as the Customer Advocate at the Public Trustee. It is one of my favourite topics to talk about. Before I get into it, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land we meet today and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. And in case I forget at the end, I just want a big thank you to Donna for coming along to talk about her interactions with the Customer Advocate. Excuse me. I will just share my screen and put up my presentation. So I guess at first I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey about how the customer advocate came about, a little bit about the public trustee, and then talk to you about the customer advocate. Okay. So as you can see from this slide, the Queensland Public Trustee, or QPT, as we're now referring to ourselves, has been around since 1916, when it was formed as the public curator to make wills for Queenslanders heading off to war. Since then, obviously, the QPT has made lots more wills and has approximately 1.2 million wills at a specifically designed wills bunker at the Brendale office of the QPT. And at that office, you can actually still find the third will that was made in 1916 at the wills bunker. So there's a lot of history there and a lot of history with the organisation. We are a statutory authority as opposed to a government department. So we are still a government entity. It just means that the way we are set up is different to a normal government department. And you can see from the graphic on that slide that there are currently 15 QPT offices around the state of Queensland to provide a great degree of coverage for as many Queenslanders as possible to access QPT services, which are, these are not exhausted, will making, of course. Most people would be aware of the will making service, and I just talked about it. QPT does still provide a free will making service for the people of Queensland, and has since 1916. If you are a person who's interested in facts and figures, in 23-24, the QPT prepared 16,504 wills for Queenslanders. A lot of people are also aware of, or would be aware of, the deceased estate services by the QPT. Usually when I tell people I work for the QPT in my private life, they say, oh, you do deceased estates. So it is quite a well-known service that QPT provides. And again, for the facts and figures people, last financial year, the QPT worked on 3,566 estates. There are also other functions that the QPT provides, such as holding unclaimed money and administering trusts, but most relevant to my role, and probably most of the people here today's roles, is the delivery of financial administration services. If you're not aware what that is, a financial administration is when an administrator is appointed to support someone with their financial matters if they are unable to do so themselves. When someone needs support with financial matters and there's no enduring power of attorney in place, then an administrator may be appointed. The administrator is appointed by the Queensland Civil and Administrative Tribunal, so QCAT, or the court. The decision to appoint an administrator will be based on the person's capacity for making decisions related to their financial matters. So it could be a person may have an intellectual disability, some kind of mental illness or age-related illness, and these conditions may impair a person's understanding of and ability to make financial decisions. And that person may be vulnerable to exploitation or financial neglect. And so an administrator supports the person's needs and protects their financial interests. It's not just the QPT, there can be private administrators appointed, and there are professional financial administrators that are not the QPT, so there's plenty of options for administrators to work with people. But in regards to the QPT, in 23-24, QPT assisted 10,553 financial management customers. So this is actually the biggest cohort of customers because of the nature of the relationship and the ones that I deal with most regularly in my role as customer advocate. And so while I do deal with customers from all service streams, at the QPT, the most common is financial management customers, and they are probably more likely to be common customers between QPT and community service providers. And so before I go into more detail about my role, it's probably important to talk about how it all came about. As we are here today, in 2019, the Human Rights Act came into existence in Queensland. Also around the same time in 2020, there were changes made to the piece of legislation that directly informs activities at the QPT. That's the Guardianship and Administration Act. This act was amended to be more consistent with human rights and also align with the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. At the same time as all this was going on in the wider environment, the QPT was also on its own reform journey. And so incorporating all these changes, the QPT developed a customers first strategy to put the customer at the centre of everything that the QPT does. And this strategy was part of wider reform at the QPT that led to a number of initiatives, but probably the most important is the move towards structured decision making, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But first, we'll cover briefly how the QPT works with customers, because my role as the customer advocate is to support and affirm this approach. And so as part of the broader reform efforts, the QPT has strengthened its commitment to working collaboratively with customers, particularly in situations where QPT are appointed as an adults administrator. The role is about more than just managing finances. It's about empowering customers, safeguarding their interests, and ensuring that every decision the QPT makes reflects their rights, preferences, and opportunities. So listening to the customer is at the core of putting the customers first. QPT actively seek to understand the views, wishes, and preferences of the customer, recognising that every individual has unique needs and circumstances. And this involves open and respectful communication and ensuring that customers feel heard, which is obviously a really important part of my role, and that their perspectives are central to the decision-making process. One of the QPT's key responsibilities is to safeguard customers' assets and protect them from financial abuse, exploitation, and neglect. And this includes having robust processes to ensure that their financial resources are managed responsibly and transparently, while also being vigilant for any signs of potential harm or misconduct. And so by prioritising their safety and wellbeing, the QPT help to build trust and confidence in their role as a responsible and ethical administrator. And so in line with the Human Rights Act, QPT committed to making decisions that are least restrictive of the customer's rights, interests, and opportunities. It can be a very careful balance between the need to provide support with the importance of respecting a customer's autonomy and independence, but wherever possible, QPT aim to minimise interference in a customer's lives, ensuring that their actions enhance rather than limit an adult's ability to make choices and pursue their goals. And that includes advocating for their access to resources, services, and opportunities that can improve their quality of life, while also ensuring that their financial decisions align with their long-term goals and aspirations. And some of the examples of this include ensuring customers are receiving correct and appropriate Centrelink benefits or accurate aged care costs, seeking debt waivers, and advocating on behalf of customers in other financial matters. Financial decision-making can obviously be complex and deeply personal, and QPT staff aim to approach every case with empathy, respect, and a focus on achieving the best possible outcomes for the customer. And this approach seeks to ensure that customers feel supported, valued, and respected throughout the process. And so this slide highlights the importance of understanding and respecting the views, wishes, and preferences of the individuals we work with. This is the structured decision-making framework that was implemented at the QPT and has been developed with the guidance and expertise of Professor Christine Bigby from La Trobe University, whose work in this area has been instrumental in shaping best practices for structured decision-making. The structured decision-making framework aligns with the principles of the Human Rights Act and the UNCRPD, which emphasise the importance of autonomy, dignity, and self-determination. And so by focusing on the views, wishes, and preferences, the QPT ensures that the decision-making processes are person-centred and reflect the unique needs and aspirations of each individual. So as you can see here, QPT staff follow 7 steps of structured decision-making to make sure that decisions are fair, transparent, and aligned with the individual's preferences. So this wheel of structured decision-making, all QPT staff have access to and have been trained in, and we'll just kind of step through the steps of the process. There's a lot of steps there. Step 1 is knowing the person, obviously understanding the individual's background, preferences, and needs. It's obviously very important when dealing with a person and their financial matters, a person's background, their family situation, their financial situation, where they live, what their goals are, what's important to them is essential in understanding and helping to make decisions in their financial lives. Step 2 is identifying the need for a decision, obviously clearly defining the decision that needs to be made. Step 3, obtaining views and preferences. So QPT staff gather input from the person and their support network. This can sometimes be tricky in circumstances where the customer may be non-verbal, or if there is a large family which has conflict. But this does make the process even more important when QPT are considering what actions and/or decisions to make for the person. So next we have identifying the priorities and constraints. So obviously determining what is the most important to the customer and their support network, considering any financial implications, and this is where staff consider and record the relevant parts of the Human Rights Act in relation to the decision. Then we move to undertaking a structured process. So the QPT has templates to guide staff through decisions, from the more basic with low detail requirements to the bigger kinds of decisions like buying or selling property, which obviously require a lot more consideration and support of the decision-making process. Some of the more complex decisions need to be approved by a regional director, so the process is not taken lightly by the QPT at any point. And then, of course, reaching the decision, pretty self-explanatory. A lot of the work here has been done in the previous steps, but this is when the decision is made. And then, of course, moving to the actioning and reviewing, ensuring that the agreed decision is recorded on the database and evidence of the steps taken to make the decision. And as you can see from the outer circle, the framework emphasises commitment, coordination, and reflection and review throughout the process. So the 7 steps of the structured decision-making provide a clear and ethical framework for ensuring decisions are made with individuals and not just for them. The structured approach aligns with the QPT's broader commitments to customer centricity, inclusivity, and continuous improvement. And of course, the QPT's dedication to upholding human rights and ensuring that every individual has the opportunity to participate meaningfully in decisions that affect their lives. So we'll just go into, oh, did it change? No, sorry. Some of the other initiatives that the QPT has developed as part of its reform journey to empower customers. Obviously, the customer advocate's on there, but I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I'm going to talk about that shortly. I should probably preface this part of the presentation by saying that I'm not an expert in any of these initiatives, but if you did want any information on any of them, feel free to reach out of the meeting and I'll get some information for you. Obviously, I'm an expert in the customer advocate, but the other ones on these couple of slides. So one of the key initiatives to help QPT customers under financial administration orders has been the development of the financial independence pathway, which provides customers with support when they want to seek greater control of their finances. The goal for most of these customers is ultimately to have the QPT's appointment revoked, and they would then become fully responsible for their own money. Sometimes it's evident that customers may never be able to gain full responsibility for their finances, and so part of the FIP is allowing adults to pay one or some of the bills themselves, often a phone bill or a utilities bill, and just providing this ability is really empowering for QPT customers. There's obviously been some fees and charges reform, and that's been a work in progress since the Public Advocate delivered a report into the Public Trustee in early 2021. I can't make any comment on that because I'm not involved, and it's obviously a government decision, but I guess there are potential changes coming to QPT fees and charges at some point. You may not be aware that the QPT actually has a disability service officers unit, which is a team of occupational therapists that assist QPT frontline staff with expertise and assistance that relates to financial decisions, particularly in decisions such as purchasing disability related items and questions related to the NDIS. QPT also has a government benefits team that helps ensure QPT customers access Centrelink benefits, assist with aged care fees, and similarly means tested government benefits. One of the great ways that QPT has been interacting with members of a customer's support network is through quarterly customer support network webinars. These aim to demystify the QPT for family members or support organisations who may deal with QPT on behalf of adults under administration orders. If anyone is interested in attending one of these webinars, you can flick me an email after the presentation and I'll pass your info onto the team that runs these. Probably the biggest change for the QPT in recent years, since the Customer's First Agenda was the initial change vehicle, but most recently has been the development of a customer support team, which we call the CST. Recently, the CST has taken over responsibility for all incoming calls to the QPT for financial administration customers. So this ensures that every call gets answered and there's accountability, regardless of staff absence due to holidays or illness or training, or just being tied up with another customer, I guess. This is the first step in the next stage of organisational reform, which should lead to better and quicker outcomes for financial administration customers at the QPT. This is not obviously an exhaustive list, but you can see that there's been a number of reforms at the QPT over the last few years. But the most important to me and to us here today, because that's what I'm here to talk about, is the customer advocate. So as Charlotte said early on when she was introducing me, the Customer Advocate was launched in 2021. It was a key initiative of the QPT's Customers First Agenda. It is a national first for trustees in Australia. It doesn't exist currently in other trustee organisations. It is based in part on the banking Customer Advocate role, and that did assist me in the early days to help in establishing what the role would do, although I also conducted a fair bit of research, which included consultation with other organisations that had different kind of support options for customers than the usual customer service models. And I also did a lot of consultation with advocacy groups and government agencies to really understand the environment in which the role exists. Initially, there was only me as the customer advocate, so the function was kind of soft launched to a specific cohort of advocacy groups. Over time, and particularly in the last 6 months, as there are now 2.5 people, including me, working in the customer advocate space, I've been really working to get awareness of the customer advocate out in the community, and that is one of the reasons why I'm here talking to you today. But in its essence, the purpose of the Customer Advocate is to provide a voice to customers inside the QPT. We really do play a critical role in facilitating quick and fair outcomes for our customers, and the learnings that we get from the activities of the Customer Advocate help the QPT to develop more customer-focused policies and procedures. And the way that the Customer Advocate is delivered and the functions are primarily in the 4 functions on this slide. Obviously, advocacy is the #1 way we support QPT customers, which you would obviously expect since it's in our name. But advocacy isn't just a function, it's really a commitment to ensuring that every QPT customer feels supported, valued and heard. As the name, the Customer Advocate suggests, advocacy is our primary focus and it drives everything we do to achieve fair outcomes for QPT customers. The Customer Advocate team plays an important role in supporting QPT customers and their support networks, particularly when they encounter challenges or feel that their concerns are not being adequately addressed through standard channels in the QPT. And we act as their voice within the organisation, ensuring that their perspectives, needs and experiences are brought to the forefront of decision-making processes. Our role is especially important in situations where customers may feel overwhelmed or they might be confused or they could be unsure of how to navigate QPT systems or policies. I mean, we are a government entity, so it can be quite difficult at times to understand how to get where you want to go. So for us, stepping in as a bridge between customers and the organisation, we can help to clarify issues, demystify processes, and ensure that customers feel empowered with the information and support they need to move forward. And sometimes just hearing the word advocate can create a totally different feeling for a customer in their interactions with QPT staff. It's probably important to note that we don't take the role of the trust officer, who are the primary support for customers. So they do undertake all the operational activities for the customers. We do just advocate on a customer's behalf to ensure their views are heard, or they receive information, or whatever it is that's needed to ensure they feel they've got a greater sense of control over their circumstances. And our involvement sometimes makes customers more open to hearing the information that QPT officers are trying to communicate, particularly if the relationship has become fractured. It can be a tough relationship on both sides because QPT customers rarely choose the QPT as their financial administrator, so the balance can be hard from the beginning. But our approach to advocacy is deeply aligned with the principles outlined in the Human Rights Act, which emphasises the importance of protecting and promoting the fundamental rights of all individuals. And so by ensuring that customers are treated with dignity, respect and fairness, we're upholding the Act's commitment to equality and non-discrimination. And we feel that our advocacy is a practical way of ensuring that these rights are not just theoretical, but are actually embedded in the way we engage and support with our customers. We also our work is informed by the values and obligations set out in the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with a Disability, so the UNCRPD, and it's a global framework, which I'm sure you're all aware of, which highlights the importance of accessibility, inclusion, and the active participation of people with disabilities in all aspects of life. And as the customer advocate, we strive to ensure that the voice of people with disabilities are not only heard, but are central to decision-making processes. For the customer advocate, by integrating these human rights frameworks into our advocacy efforts, we ensure that our work is not only customer focused, but aligned with broader legal and ethical standards, which means advocating for fair outcomes that respect the diverse needs of all customers, including those who may face additional barriers or vulnerability. So part of our advocacy effort, and one of the ways we get better outcomes for QPT customers, is by facilitating meetings with both internal and external stakeholders, including the customer and their support network. We really work in these meetings to foster collaboration, share information, and create an agreed way forward to create better outcomes for both the customer and the QPT. Particularly when there are a number of stakeholders involved or the matter is complex and requires input from multiple parties, stakeholder meetings become a really valuable tool. These meetings are especially helpful when more than one decision needs to be made, or at the very least when agreement on a way forward is required. And by bringing everyone together, these discussions create a shared space for collaboration, ensuring that all the voices are heard and that differing perspectives are considered. Usually these meetings are conducted virtually, similar to how we are interacting today, and that enables stakeholders from all over Queensland to participate, and also allows us in the Customer Advocate Office to be based in Brisbane but able to assist customers statewide. And ultimately, the stakeholder meetings aren't just about resolving immediate issues, but also building stronger relationships and sharing information. And so for urgent or complex matters, the customer advocate can play a role in ensuring timely escalation. We're often approached by members of a customer's support network or a customer themselves who may have an urgent decision, perhaps relating to accommodation, or they may have some financial hardship. Maybe there are some health or safety concerns or time-sensitive outcomes, and we can ensure that these matters are brought to the attention of the appropriate decision makers or teams without delay. And we also take a continued role in following up these matters to ensure that they continue to progress. And we can also act as a conduit for information between QPT and customers and/or their support network, and arrange a stakeholder meeting, as I just talked about, very quickly if needed. I guess that means that we can expedite resolutions, ensuring that our QPT customers aren't left waiting for extended periods, which, as we know, can lead to frustration. And by ensuring that the right people are involved at the right time, we feel that we help to maintain trust and confidence in the QPT's ability to deliver fair and timely outcomes. And the last function that's important for us is review. So that involves analysing issues and trends to identify systemic challenges that may be affecting individual or multiple customers, and we do this by undertaking reviews on specific customer matters that may have been referred to the customer advocate or that may have been identified in a complaint, or by identifying wider trends that may be occurring across the organisation through our interactions with different customers or agencies. And this analysis is, well, we think, critical for understanding the root causes of issues within the organisation. For example, it might reveal gaps in communication, inconsistencies in service delivery, or policies and processes that can unintentionally disadvantage customers. And so by identifying these systemic challenges, the customer advocate can help address not just the symptoms, but the underlying issues that impact customers on a broader scale. And so a key focus of the customer advocate is on continuous improvement. And so the insights gained from analysing trends and thematic issues are used to refine processes and enhance overall customer experience. And this, excuse me, this might involve recommending changes to policies, suggesting staff training, or changes to process to better meet customer needs. So this next slide just gives an example of some of the activities the customer advocate team is involved in. The left-hand side box lists examples of the type of matters we have been involved in. So ensuring customers receive clear, timely and accurate information so they can provide informed input into the decisions that are affecting them. We've been involved in facilitating quick access to critical funds during emergencies to alleviate customers' pressing needs. Particularly in relation to housing or accommodation and living expenses. And in that accommodation or tenancy space, we've also assisted customers who are needing to secure or maintain their housing arrangements. We've been able to escalate and or facilitate those arrangements, particularly again, when there are multiple stakeholders involved, which can complicate a situation and increase the time it takes to get some of those agreements signed or finalised. And again, that's where those stakeholder meetings can become crucial. We support customers through complex processes like buying or selling a home, purchasing vehicles, particularly if they need to or are modified. Obviously, they can be complicated decisions and again can involve a number of stakeholders in the decision and the process. I should make it clear, which I talked before, we don't take the place of trust officers, but we don't generally provide ongoing case management, but there have been circumstances where we have regularly facilitated quarterly meetings or more regularly meetings when a customer needs continued support and coordination to address complex or evolving needs. And so in the box on the right-hand side are some of the examples of the bigger projects that I and my team have been involved in. So I worked with a number of internal and external stakeholders to establish a referral pathway to Queensland Advocacy for Inclusion for QPT customers who wish to seek a review of the QPT's appointment as their financial administrator. This referral pathway allows QPT trust officers to refer consenting customers directly to QAI through the QPT's database and gets them advice and assistance in potentially gaining more control of their finances. That pathway was launched in late September 2022, and since then trust officers have referred 161 customers to QAI. This pathway kind of sits adjacent to and in amongst the financial independence pathway that I touched on earlier in the presentation, and is a really important part of helping QPT customers to regain control of their finances. It can take some time to get a QCAT hearing, and customers may need to get a report on their capacity from a doctor. They may need to prove they can handle their own finances through something like the financial independence pathway. But so far, 35 of those customers referred to QAI have regained control of their finances, and we do expect to see more regain control in the future as that pathway continues to evolve. I'm also the chair of the QCAT panel, which ensures that all options are considered for customers prior to making an application to QCAT for directions. I've also been doing a large amount of stakeholder engagement, which is again why I'm here today. So late last year, I got a full-time customer advocate staff member, and started contacting advocacy groups and peak bodies and other similar organisations to try to have meetings so that we could get awareness of the customer advocate out there, but also create a library of referral options for customers that are referred to us or that come to the customer advocate, so that we can provide holistic support for our customers. We often see customers that need assistance with other parts of their life that are related to finances, but not directly related to the activities of the QPT. And the goal is to be able to assist these customers access the support they need in all areas of their life. I'm always happy to chat with people and discuss how we can work together to help mutual customers, whether that be one customer or a number of customers. And if you think it might be helpful to have a chat, please feel free to reach out to me after today. I thought it would be good to just give you an idea of the kind of numbers of customers. I think it said at the beginning that's 280 customers, but in the first 18 months when it was just me, I was involved in 52 customer matters. In the next financial year, that increased to 90, and then in the last financial year, that went up to 138. So as you can see, it's increasing demand and engagement as time goes on, which is excellent because obviously that means we get to help more customers. And then in the last financial year, it just kind of gives you a snapshot of some of the activities that we do. We received 26 referrals from advocacy groups. We held 34 meetings with customers and all members of their support network. And then we had, this is evidence of our internal influence, 67 meetings with QPT staff. And then just a little bit about our expertise and capability. Obviously, we are guided by the principles of some of those frameworks that I talked about before. So the UNCRPD, the UNDRIP, the general principles under the Guardianship and Administration Act, and of course, the Human Rights Act, which is really important. We don't pretend that we are experts in anything in the Customer Advocate Office, so we do seek specialist advice for different customers depending on what their individual circumstances are, but we do undertake some training that's really helpful in delivering our services. Dispute resolution trainings, training in mediation. We've done some disability readiness training and some Indigenous cultural immersion training. Now, if you want to contact us, I've just put, there's 3 members of the team. Obviously, there's myself and there's another Melissa. So if you say Melissa in my team, generally someone responds. And Ross is our token male, but he's very helpful and probably does most of the customer interactions nowadays. But if you need to get in contact with us, you can email customer.advocate@pt.qld.gov.au. Don't listen to what I'm saying. Read what it says on the screen, or you can call that number. We don't have a specific referral template. We don't want to provide any barriers to anyone accessing our services. So you can email us or phone the number, and we will assist you wherever we can. And I think that's it for the.
That's a good point about reducing those barriers. That's good to know, Melissa. Thank you very much. Some questions came through whilst you were presenting.
Great.
We can take a couple now, just before we move on. So I don't know if you can see the chat, Melissa.
I'll jump in
and just have a look. But first question from Sarah is, how can a customer request assistance from the Disability Services Officer unit?
So that is an internal unit, and generally they provide advice to trust officers, but I can probably get more information on that and come back to you about that one, if that's okay.
Lorraine has written about her understanding just a little bit down the chat. Does that sound familiar to you?
Not legally able to provide it. Okay, that's interesting. yeah, it definitely works within the PT, but sometimes they do get involved in customer matters. But yeah, I probably just need to find out more information about how it actually works and what the access arrangements are about that. And that's really interesting about the requesting information. I will pass that information on.
And Natalie has asked whether the QPT officers and executives are now trained in human rights.
Yes, so all QPT officers and everyone in the organisation was trained in human rights, and it is part of the onboarding coming into the organisation. And so all decisions are made with consideration of human rights, and there is actually a component of when they are recording all the decisions that are made on behalf of customers that they need to document the human rights that was considered, or if there are limitations on a person's human rights, why those limitations have been made. So yes, everyone should be trained in human rights. I guess levels of understanding may vary, but there's certainly a lot of resources available for us to access if we do need any clarification.
And I can see that Elaine said that she is a disability
Elaine!
support officer.
Elaine! Oh, yes, jump
so
in.
if you're welcome to jump in, Elaine, and answer those questions.
Hi everyone, my name's
Hello.
Elaine. I'm one of the disability support officers at the Public Trustee.
That's lucky.
Yeah, it was a little
Fortunate.
bit lucky.
Something I prepared earlier, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we're a very small team of 3 occupational therapists that are based at the Public Trustee. We all have relevant clinical experience in sort of disability, healthcare, aged care, mental health. Our primary, I guess, customer or client is our trust officers. We often sit in the background and we provide advice to trust officers when they are making decisions about use of a person's individual personal funding to purchase disability type supports or health related supports. So for example, an NDIS type support. So we work with the trust officer usually in the background and provide that advice, but sometimes when things become a little bit more complex, similar to Mel's role, we will step in and organise stakeholder meetings to get everyone on the same page. And attempt to come to a resolution about the best use of customers' funds, advocate at the NDIS if required. Sorry, my screen's just turned off, so I'm just going to put my password in. Oh, of course, I've typed it in incorrectly.
No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Hopefully I'm back.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, you know, in response to Lorraine's I guess query, we're entitled to the same information that our customer would have under Section 44 of the Guardianship and Administration Act if we need that information to make a financial decision. So it might seem that we're asking questions that, you know, people may not think we have the authority to ask, but if it's relating to their finances and our capacity to make a decision and we need that little bit more information, that's when we will ask for that little bit more information to help inform the decision. A lot of our work is NDIS related. Participants' plans aren't meeting their needs, and we'll certainly go in to find out what's gone on with the plan. We're not involved in the planning process. We have no authority over their funds, but we are there to ensure the best financial outcome for our customers and ensure they're getting access to the services and supports they need. So hopefully that clarifies some stuff around our role.
Thank you, Elaine. I was very fortunate to have you. Thank you.
Oh, Lorraine's got her hand up.
I do. I think from our perspective, I absolutely get the role. No, don't get me wrong. But our experience has been the request for the information is to ask us as a provider. I do accommodation. So ask the provider of these services to provide public trust with a person's positive behaviour support plan. And that's information that I'm advised by the service delivery team. That is not, we're not the author of that. They're not the authors of that. So that is an external provider that is the author. So whilst we may hold it with a third party, or they are the third party, and that's where we've had the conflict of, what is the need for the information? Because it's usually around damage, because I think it's around, there's damage occurred in a property. I, as the property manager, have then asked the client public trust to pay for that damage based on their rooming agreement. And then we're backwards and forwards with this. Well, we want this evidence, we want this evidence. It's not evidence me and I in accommodation have, because I would be no different to a Department of Housing house. I wouldn't hold that information. It then goes to the service delivery team, who then say, but it's a third party writer. We are holding with authority. And I think that's where from ours, it goes backwards and forwards. And so that was my note around the legislation component. I don't have, or service delivery have, the right to give you something that we don't own. And I think that was where the confusion, perhaps in my note came, that was actually legally, I can't give you something I don't own. I have been given this as part of the role, or I don't actually service delivery, I don't actually hold it myself. So that was where I just wanted to clarify that we in the property component do not hold a copy of a person's personal behaviour support plans. NDIS plans, I purely look after accommodation and the RTA legislation component. I think you and I have spoken in the past in that space, Elaine. I think with the three of you guys, I know that one of your directors is heavily involved with us in from a Southern Cross, now Canada service. So we are actively working to work in that space, which is fantastic, because the results we've had have been absolutely huge for both parties. The person stays in accommodation, they have a great service, and we've managed to get things done. Payment plans that don't impact financially, or all of those things. So there's just a few things, but yeah, it was around that I just wanted to clarify. It was more around, we can't give you what we're not entitled to give you. And so I think, but that's been clarified from our perspective. But I wanted all the audience here to know that we weren't anti, we were just saying that, you know, sometimes people ask for things that we aren't legally able to give in that space.
Thank you, Lorraine. Elaine, did you, we just spend a little bit more time on this and then we'll have to move on, but you had your hand raised before, Elaine, and there's some questions coming through in the chat. Have you seen those ones? Yeah.
I have, actually. I guess for, you know, the circumstance with Lorraine, it got a bit blurred because of the difference between the one organisation having a branch that is I guess a tenancy, you know, branch and accommodation branch versus the service delivery and the SIL providers. So as Lorraine said, we've been working together to sort of clarify roles and responsibilities. So, you know, that has been really positive, I believe. I'm looking at this question from Natalie. We have had the issue of NDIS funds being frequently used to meet QPT requirements, such as getting 3 quotes to buy an item. So NDIS funds will need to be used, but have not been planned for to travel and have support worker to travel. That's a difficult one. It would depend on what the request is and what information we are seeking to make the financial decision. Generally speaking, if it's assistive technology, we're not requesting 3 quotes. We're requesting that a suitably qualified allied health professional is completing their assessment and making their recommendation and providing us with a quote from an approved, you know, from a supplier to make the financial decision on behalf of our customer. So that does get a bit tricky when, you know, we might need to use some of their capacity building funding in their NDIS plan to obtain an assessment and report outlining their recommendations. It just gets really complicated. But, you know, happy for anyone to reach out and for Melissa to pass on the email address of our team as well, so that if anyone's got any questions, we'd be happy to maybe another time have a stakeholder meeting about the role of the disability support officer.
Yeah, well, I just was thinking while you were talking, Elaine, that it might be helpful if I reach out to Natalie and Lorraine and perhaps we arrange a meeting to just kind of talk about some of these issues sometime in the near future.
Yeah, and I'm cognizant that, you know, I don't want to take over. I'm sure lots of people have questions, but it's not about the disability support officers today. So, as I said, reach out to Melissa and we can have further conversations if needed. Thank you.
I think it's good.
People together.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that this has come up and now we have a pathway for some,
Absolutely.
you know, further chats and that sort of thing. So that's great.
Evidence of the customer advocate in action.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So I'm trying to share my screen again to get us back on track.
Well, Lorraine's got her hand up. I don't know.
Oh.
If you need to.
Sorry, ladies. I just have.
That's okay.
I just have one quick question, which relates to the advocacy component. Because we're dealing people obviously who have a disability, predominantly because that's our job. Where it comes to, I just wanted to get a better understanding, because I do have service delivery staff in my office sometimes come and ask, I suppose, having years of experience behind myself, where we sit, or any organisation sits, that's trying to support a person whose impaired decision making stops them purchasing food. And so what we find is we have people who have a preference for other items, let's say alcohol, drugs of type, before they'll even consider food. So we've often found that the service component of a business is in a rock and a hard place, because we have fear that the person is going to become unwell because they're not purchasing any food whatsoever, or very little. But we're not. We often will talk, with public trustee to say, can we set up a payment type? Can we put it into a card? I don't know, that's at a shop. But then it becomes the human rights component, which is the person has a right to spend it on what they want. But it's a very difficult situation because we're seeing a person deteriorate in health. So I just wondered if you'd had any feedback, Melissa, in that space.
Yes, so we have been involved with some customers that where it's a tightrope between making sure that their needs are met and actioning their views, wishes and preferences. And I don't want to make a blanket statement about how it pans out, because it's often really different for different circumstances. But I guess what I would say is that if you do have specific challenges with a customer or cohort of customers, feel free to reach out to me, and we just look at every case uniquely, and there's not a one size fits all approach to each circumstance. So we will just look at it and try to work with whoever's brought it to us, the customer and the public trustee and any other stakeholders, to try to come to a resolution that works for everyone.
Which is step one of your process, from what I remember, yes. Knowing the person, which I thought was an excellent first step, because I think that sometimes can get missed. So I think that was a super important first step.
And Elaine's got her hand up. Oh no, hand down.
Okay.
I just wanted to probably add a comment there that, like Melissa said, we can look at individual participants or people's needs, and there are situations where they're not making decisions to meet their basic needs. We do want to give them the dignity of risk and making choices that they want to make. But if basic needs aren't being met, we do look at making like a board and lodgings payment, which includes sort of groceries and household consumables, and we use the NDIS SDA price guideline as a guide, because there's no rules around that, I guess. So there are options to look at different ways to ensure that there's sufficient money for a person to have food included in their budget. Yeah, that was just my comment.
Thank you, Elaine. My third impromptu guest speaker. I am just trying to move my cursor so I can share my screen again.
Sorry, everyone. Charlotte is using my desk in the office and I'm working from home, and I have a subpar mouse that she is having to use. It's very sticky.
Yeah. I'm trying my best. I had it before and then I brilliantly decided to look at some other screen. Oh, I've got it. Okay. let's hope this comes back. Oops. That's not what we want, is it? No, this is the other one. Sorry, technical difficulties.
While you're doing that, Charlotte,
Sorry,
maybe I'll
yeah.
while you're doing that, I can fill up a minute we'll have a quick interlude for me to talk to you about very briefly about 3 webinars we've got coming up.
That would be great.
While Charlotte's getting that sorted. So we wanted to let you know that there are 3 webinars coming up that we're doing in partnership with the Department of Housing and Public Works. We have a beginner, intermediate and advanced learner webinar available online. And have really designed them to be suited to varying expertise or understanding levels to cater to all the different people we have working in the sector. We know lots of people are coming and going out of the sector. Some of you have been thinking about this kind of work for a long time, and the intermediate or advanced session may be better suited to you. So for yourselves or for your teams back in your organisations, we are working closely with the Queensland Law Society, with QAI, and with the Queensland Human Rights Commission to put these sessions together. They're free. And as I said, they'll be online, lots of opportunity for participation. So they're not just passive sitting and listening, but we'll have breakout sessions, opportunity for you to discuss with your colleagues across the sector. We would love to see you there. So I've just popped the 3 different registration links in the chat. We'll make sure we include them too in the post-event email today. But if you'd like to share them with your colleagues across your organisations and consider them for yourselves, we'd love to see you. Thank you. Interlude over. Maybe not over. I can keep going. Did someone just have their hand up? No. Okay, I will keep going if I've got some time, because the other thing I very quickly wanted to mention to you, and you may have seen it on our social media, is the Queensland Community Sector Survey. This is a really important survey for us to be able to share with you, because QCOS every year has varying budget asks and advocacy priorities that we form up for the year ahead. And we use things such as the data from the Queensland Community Sector Survey to do that. So some of you will be joining us at our town halls across the regions, and we gather a lot of intel from those. But the other way we gather quite a lot of intel for our budget priorities for the year ahead and for our advocacy is through the survey. So I've popped that in the chat. It's not intended to be onerous, but the more responses we get to the survey, the more powerful our advocacy is, really, because then we have the numbers to really evidence the asks that we have. So I would encourage you to fill out the survey if you're able to, and to share it with your colleagues too, because it also has questions specifically about you and your role and your work in the community services sector. So it's not a one per organisation response. Everyone can fill in the survey. And I think Charlotte's back.
I am back.
So interlude really over now.
That was interesting. Anyway, you can't get through your first presentation without something going wrong. It's lucky or something. So our next slide, I'm just conscious of time now, but I just wondered if Melissa and maybe Donna and whoever else might be able to comment on the customer advocate can sort of identify sort of the sections or objectives of the Act, the Human Rights Act of Queensland, have been drawn on in the creation and delivery of the customer advocate role. I was able to, pick out a few things just from, you talking about the 7 steps and that sort of thing. But if there's something that you can add that you specifically focused on, that would be wonderful.
Yes. So there are probably 2 human rights that really shaped the framework originally for the customer advocate role. A recognition and equality before the law, because obviously we want to promote the rights of individuals to participate in decisions that affect their lives, and the right to participate in public life.
Yes.
Ensuring that their views, wishes and preferences remain at the core of everything that we do. And then just generally the Human Rights Act overarching purpose is to protect and promote human rights, obviously. And we in the Customer Advocate try to support these objectives by embedding those human rights principles into our activities and ensuring that customers are treated with dignity, respect, inclusion and fairness.
I particularly liked your term, and I don't know, borrow it, or it's was a agreed way forward. I liked that. That was really stuck out to me when you were talking about the processes, because I think that, knowing the person, the first step, so knowing what, their what is important to them, knowing what voice, what particular aspects that they wanted to really put forward, to really, their cultural background and their wants and needs, because as you said, I mean, it's not just, oh, this person may have this disability, therefore they're going to, want this or this, so yes, Donna, did you want to add?
I'm going to add in with the human rights law, protection from cruel, inhuman and degrading treatments. So that's something for the public trustee and particularly the customer advocate role is sort of based around, I think, is being clear that intervention that involves the removal of agency or autonomy or led to unnecessary or excessive control can be viewed as degrading treatment, and being stripped of adult identity, which is what people with disability do feel when somebody is made an administrator of their life. And being subjected to intrusive control over finances, choices or relationships can be a breach of that protection. So I think that's a really tricky road that public trustee has always walked on, and something I've seen that's Melissa's role has been really helpful around navigating that with some of the people we're involved with.
Okay, thank you, Donna. And just, I wondered if, you don't have to go into too much detail, but has the Act helped with challenges in the delivery of the customer advocate role? Come on, Charlotte.
It has, because one of the challenges of the customer advocate role has been balancing the needs and rights of individual customers against organisational policies, resources, that piece of legislation that the public trustee works under. And then, of course, there's stakeholder interests. So it can be quite hard to maintain that balance at times. And so the Act and the whole framework that we work under does help provide a structured approach and also some support
keeps
when
that
we
focus and guidance.
And gives us a little bit of oomph, I guess, in certain circumstances to remind people of their obligations to our customers.
So I think that's a really great point, because using the Act as a guide or a framework and pulling strength from that, I think helps people progress in their service delivery, keeps them sort of on point, and they can reflect and ask themselves if what they're providing is in line with the Act. So I think it is a very powerful tool. So it's fabulous to see that has helped you in those challenges.
Definitely.
Right, it might be Donna's time to shine, if I remember correctly. If I can move my mouse. No. Let's just see, hang on. Yes. See, look, welcome, Donna. It is your time to shine. So I think Donna, you're just going to, you don't have slides, but you're going to
Yep.
have a chat with us.
Yep.
Wonderful. Donna's going to share some wonderful examples in the form of some case studies. So over to you, Donna.
I don't know about how wonderful, because it's been very challenging.
Yes, sorry, probably wrong test, but I guess I meant in terms of an example of how the advocate has helped in your situations.
Sure. So I'm from Sunshine Coast Citizen Advocacy. We're a federally funded program for the National Disability Advocacy Program. We're not largely referral based. We try to be outreach so that we can meet the needs of people with intellectual disability who don't have the capacity to self-refer, or they might be being prevented from referring to our service. Our way of providing that advocacy is matching a vulnerable person with intellectual disability to a citizen who we've recruited as a citizen advocate, who's then in a freely given independent role, so there's no conflict of interest. And they're also independent of the Citizen Advocacy Office. Our role is to support the advocates and the person they're advocating for. So the story I thought I would share, obviously I've changed names. So back in October 2023, we came in contact with a lady I'm going to call Jane via her partner reaching out to us. So Jane at the time was 27 years old, has an intellectual disability and cerebral palsy, and was 5 to 6 months pregnant. Her and her partner had been living together for several years in their own home, and had been in their own home that they purchased for 4 years. In that past year, she had come under the administration of the public trustee and was pretty confused about how that happened. So her and her partner, who I'll call John, were confused and frustrated by the involvement of public trustee, as they, up until that time, had been managing their finances, including their home mortgage, quite well. They were fearful of losing their home, their sanity, because they weren't sure how the systems worked, and they were really worried about their home loans being paid late and things like that. And as most of us know, when after that QCAP tribunal and administration transfers to public trustee, it can take a while for everything to get straightened out. And in those few weeks, payments can get missed and things. It's always made up, I guess, in the end, but for that couple, it was really distressing. Probably at the same time, the adult guardian was also involved. Child safety had been notified around potential risk for that baby. So for Jane, she was looking at losing her home, her relationship, and even her child, which is pretty horrific. So that's why we became involved. We recruited a beautiful lady called Carol to be Jane's citizen advocate. She had a lot of experience around previously working in family advocacy, and a lot of her life working in childcare. So I wanted to tell you what we saw versus what other people were seeing from a systematic side. So when we first started to get to know Jane and John, we kept thinking, wow, this is a couple who people should be literally carrying on their shoulders in a parade down the street, because they really had what all of us see as a good life. Jane and John had been a couple for several years and lived together for 5 years. They had their beautiful new home that they were really proud of, and they were really proud of how they were managing their home ownership and their home loan. They had a good financial record. They liked to pay everything early. That was really important to them. This is a couple that preferred a more older traditional lifestyle. So for them, it was about John was the person who went to work and he paid all the bills, and Jane was the person who maintained the home and was preparing for parenthood by being involved in those prenatal classes and joining a mum's bumps and bubs group. So they had the life that many couples their age would dream of, to be honest. And although Jane had difficulty with higher order decision making, particularly in regards to her finances, her partner did have a good knowledge. So they had a shared and complementary decision-making ability. But then there was other perspectives from other people who saw them in a different light. So even though Jane did have some NDIS service provision, not a lot. She only had about 3 days a week. But as we all know, if you have an NDIS plan in place, there's a cast of thousands in the background. You've got your OTs and your psychologists and all your different people that you've got to get reports from and all of those sort of things. So there was a lot of people perceiving things differently about Jane and John's relationship. From one of the largest service providers in particular, what was coming across was their perception that because Jane had an intellectual disability, that made her similar to being a child. So in some of their expression to Carol, it was like, you need to understand she's only a 9-year-old girl. So this relationship realistically is about sexual abuse and rape and financial exploitation. So those things got reported. So it made other people see them in an incredibly negative light. With the pressure of those things happening, the couple did split up for a couple of months. And during that time, Jane was really encouraged to back the application of others for financial administration and the adult guardian to make decisions around her healthcare and things. But like many young couples, they got back together fairly quickly. So Jane had made the assumption that those applications would have been cancelled, and John didn't even know about them until it started really impacting on their mortgage payments and things like that. They can imagine from their perspective, public trustee, particularly for John, wasn't his favourite people in his life at all. From the public trustee's perspective, you could see what they were trying to achieve. They knew that Jane was a really vulnerable person, and they're getting these really abusive, aggressive calls from John because he's hit the wall. He doesn't know what's happening anymore, and he's lost it. He's really angry, and that's what the public trustee officers were getting the calls from constantly around that. And I think it was around that time that the customer advocate got involved. I think, was it Melissa? So we hadn't really known about your role then, but it sort of came in a very timely way.
Yeah, we received an internal referral.
Yeah. So everybody was able to communicate from that point. So where we went to from there was Carol being able to communicate alongside Jane with public trustee and initiate those consultations in a different way. We also navigated the situation with John to have some trust in the advocacy service to get things to a point before a tribunal, with the hope that he might back off from those abusive phone calls and things and give everyone time to do the other stuff they needed to do. It started with a lot of phone conversations, and then we had a meeting in our office where the public trustee workers came here. We've got quite a friendly office space, and we had a morning tea with Jane and Carol, and it was a really pleasant experience for everyone, where it was a group of people who shared their personal life stories, and the public trustees got to see Jane in a different light, talking about, her baby that was coming up, and talking about her overprotective partner and why he, and their relationship, how she liked him paying the bills in the past and all of those sort of things. And that, once we had that shared view of who this couple was, we were able to move forward together rapidly to get things into place. So within a month of that, I think there was the tribunal came up, and together everybody presented that same story of, this is a couple that people should be carrying on their shoulders in a parade because they're doing so well. And the outcome of that was the tribunal member acknowledged that Jane did not have capacity to make complicated financial decisions on her own. However, between her partner and her circle of support, including her citizen advocate and other supports, she had a really good and safe supported decision-making mechanism around her that would protect her. So at that point, the role of the public trustee and the adult guardian was declined in Jane's life. So that was a really, really successful thing.
Thank you.
Following that, I'll go a bit further. So a baby was born a week after that tribunal, beautiful little girl. Child Protection stepped in first day, and then they stepped out 2 days later, because again, they had that story of how great this family were going. Really sadly, probably getting close to 10 months later, that family broke up. So they had a lot of pressure on them from the previous things, and we could see a cycle of domestic violence starting to form, and part of that was Jane stopping having access to her circle of support. So she was losing that capacity to make decisions for herself, and her partner had left her in February. So at that point, they have a property they own together. So there's a sale of a house coming up. There's all these difficult issues. And hey, I've been divorced twice. It's hell going through that stuff. So we did get some support, some pro bono support from a couple of lawyers for Jane, but realistically, Jane didn't have capacity to give them direction. So we needed to go through the process of the public trustee again, which was rapid, because we already had the communication with Melissa and Ross through their introducing themselves and us spending a lot of time in sharing potential of how we could work together. So I think from the 31st of the 3rd, the application for an urgent intervention or action from the public trustee to QCAT was put in. It was instigated on the 3rd of April, and we were all sitting at the table together. So that was Ross, another person from Public Trust, 2 people from Public Trustee. I think it was Faith and Jessica, myself, the citizen advocate, and Jane. And it was a really good meeting of unpacking what are the risks, what do we need to safeguard first, and because it is complicated, because selling the house means that Jane's homeless. So we were able to prioritise. We need to sort that out first, navigate things with John so he can know it is happening. We're not trying to stop it from happening, but that needs to happen first. And yeah, that's where we're up to now.
Wonderful. So it sounds like the customer advocate, Melissa and Simon, were able to help you an awful lot.
Very so.
Yeah. Untangled some webs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm going to try and share again. Let's see what I can do. Oh, that's good. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm conscious of time. We've only technically got a few more minutes left. So I wondered, if there's any quick questions, we can either, I can collate them and send them out, or if you have anything really quickly to ask either of our speakers today, we can do that.
Can I quickly add one more thing?
Sure.
Just that like this portrayal of people with disability being seen as a paternal child, non-sexual or different in any way to other people, it strips them of their agency, autonomy, their dignity, and it's reinforcing outdated and paternalistic attitudes. It undermines their capabilities and contributions, treating them as perpetual dependents rather than recognising their potential for growth, independence, and meaningful engagement in society. Such perspectives not only hinder the self-esteem and confidence of people with disability, but also contributes to the perpetration of discriminating practices and exclusions. We all know with the right supports, people with cognitive disabilities can be homeowners, partners, and parents, and maintain strong relationships and care for a child. But sometimes all of us need a little bit of support with that in different ways. So I think the example of the story I shared with you, where things could have gotten worse, having the client advocate step in and support the whole public trust team around that young couple has been really incredible in their life, in one, acknowledging their rights as human beings, and also in recognising their right to dignity of risk with the right safeguards around it. It didn't work out in the end, but they did get that dignity to give it the best shot.
And the good thing about that is that because they've experienced that respect through this process and that dignity, it won't be so much of a barrier if something else comes up in the future, that they can, be open to going through such processes again. I think that's, having done no harm in that process, I think really speaks volumes in terms of their future achievements and any issues that might arise. Okay.
Can I answer the question around domestic violence? I probably did gloss over it. It is a very relevant involvement in that family now, where all parties are being really clear around how we're managing that and communicating with each other around keeping that couple safe. They don't understand that they're in a domestic violence cycle.
Wonderful. Okay, so a quick summary. Me gathering content for this, I learnt about the 7 different initiatives, and then one such initiative is the customer advocate. I've learned a lot through this process, so I thank you very much for your time, Melissa, and all sharing your processes and things with us, because I certainly have learnt a lot, and I feel from the feedback it's been a very beneficial discussion for everybody who's come along today. So Stacey's mentioned these, and I will send you through the links in the follow-up email after today's session, just so you know, if you are interested in the housing network meetings, or the workshops, that go through the different, from beginner to advanced knowledge of the Human Rights Act and how that applies to the housing matters. And then our next Human Rights Network meeting will be on the Victims' Rights Charter. So that will be a really interesting one to come along to on the 8th of July. And as Stacey mentioned, we've got our wonderful conference coming up on the 25th.
I didn't actually mention that. I didn't quite get to that. So very quickly,
there we go.
In November, we would love to see you at the QCOS conference. This happens, we generally do the QCOS conference every second year. And you will know that, well, some of you will know that every year we have the Queensland Community Impact Awards. And in the years that we have a conference, the Queensland Community Impact Awards are part of the conference. So nominations for the awards will be opening soon, and registrations for the conference will be opening really soon. So please keep an eye out on that. We would really love to see you at the conference. We've got a very exciting program lined up. So keep your eyes out for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. So yes, we've got lots of exciting events coming up. Be sure to have a look at the events page on our website. As I said, I'll send links and that sort of thing after we've finished today, so you can explore those events and get back to Melissa with any other questions. I really would love to thank you all for coming today and supporting us to share this knowledge, and I particularly want to thank Donna and Melissa and Elaine, my impromptu guest, and all of your voices and feedback from today. If you have any questions in regard to this particular discussion, you feel free to email me at charlotteb@qcos.org.au. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you next time, and I thank you very much.
And please let us know how you found today's session. There's a Survey Monkey link in the chat. Also love your comments too. So thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.